in a sense, when you think about it. And this is an insight I had a number of years ago, and you can apply this any place. The whole business of government is insurance when you think about it. It ensures us that we are safe from enemies, that we're safe from crime, that we're safe from injustice. And you might think that I'm leading up for a single-payer health care system, and I'm not going there. I'm not. Because I'm not trying to lobby from my point of view. I'm just trying to open your minds up a little bit. I want you to remember that the federal government, even in all these things that it does, has help. One of the reasons we don't have more wars is that we have friends in other nations that like us. Sometimes I wonder why, but I'll take that on faith and say, not everyone who could be at war with us is, and that means other nations are helping us. That's wonderful. Likewise, states and cities put it together, police forces, fire departments, school systems, so the federal government doesn't have to. Voluntary associations like the Bar Association, like churches, like PTAs, do the work of the state. And together they make an elaborate network that we call federalism. It's a theory that a nation is an amalgam, a covenant between citizens, associations like churches, towns, cities, counties, federal governments and agencies, and even businesses to sustain the nation at large. That's because we believe power should be dispersed, because we believe Lord Acton was right in the 19th century. Anyone here remember Lord Acton? Oh, come on, you do. All power tends to corrupt, and absolute power tends to corrupt absolutely. We are suspicious of accumulations of power. We don't want to see people with too much power, government with too much power. That's a classic Republican notion. But it's not a bad one. I told you, conservatism isn't always wrong. So we need to find a healthcare system that is federal in its quality. And I'm going to give you some ideas about how that might look. I am no expert. Everyone in this room will tell you that I am no expert. I'm just wanting you to think in a new way. For example, I think being vaccinated is as much public health as not being given bad water. Why aren't all vaccinations free? Why do we have to pay for them? People who don't need to get these diseases don't have to pay for them, and they always seem to go to children. And for that matter, why do we have to pay for seeing a doctor when we're well? That's the cheapest visit in the world. But people still don't go and do it, and therefore they miss the opportunity. So here's my first idea. Let's spend more money, our federal money, on preventing health problems so that we have fewer of them to have to treat. I think that vaccinations and routine, non-emergency, and dental care should be something we all get from our tax dollars. Prevention would save billions. But people, often poor people, don't see the physicians and dentists until they have a problem, at which point it becomes expensive. But if they didn't have to pay in the first place, maybe they wouldn't be as sick. By the way, I include prenatal care in this notion. Let's provide full coverage for children up to the age of 18, because I don't think it should matter whether your parents have health insurance. No 5-year-old should be forced to carry the burden of illness because mom and dad, or mom or dad, cannot afford health insurance. Children should be covered, and mostly they're pretty healthy anyway. It's a good bet. Yeah, there's some sick kids, but most of them are pretty healthy. It would not cost us that much money. And if you make them healthy until they're 18, they're much less likely to be unhealthy at 36. Let's try another idea. Provide basic health coverage for what we call routine medical needs that are not well. For example, urgent care. You have to go and get your sprained ankle cared for. Common blood tests, other common treatments, like when you have the flu, and make that available via an income-based tax just like Medicare is. This should include catastrophic health insurance too, which would leave a large space in between basic wellness care and really awful health issues. And that's the place where I think we should have insurance choices. Because some of us, if you're 25, you're not going to want to worry about some things. And you don't want to spend your money, so buy something cheap. But if you're 55, you want to be like me. You might want to buy a little more coverage as you realize those aches and pains could be leading you to something. What I'm trying to talk about is in some way creating a place in the middle where there's still a range of choices, but below which the government reasonably assumes the risk, and above which the government assumes the risk, because the risk at both ends is minor, but when it happens to you, it's enormous. But overall, as a population, it's fairly small. Here's another thing we should be doing: creating national standards and practices for records and record maintenance. Do you realize that the only major industry that is not completely computerized at this point is the medical industry? They still take all their notes with pens, and remember how well doctors write? Medical mistakes account for thousands of deaths a year. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we all gave them keyboarding skills, and therefore you could take your medical records anywhere you went? Now, people are going to worry about people having access to your medical care, but do you think are you happy with Blue Cross Blue Shield having it already? You think it's already hidden? Give yourself a break here. It's a reality. It can be dealt with. And mind you, you use your credit cards just about every day, and anyone can tell a lot more about you from your credit cards than they can from your health care records, I can tell you. I think that the government should pay at least half the cost of health care education for people going to medical school, nursing school, and dental school. Why? Because so many of them come out needing so much money to pay it off that they go into specialties and don't go into family care. You see where I'm going? If you have to borrow $300,000 to become a doctor, how are you going to pay that off? Because guess what? Basic doctors make about $120,000 a year, and I know that's a lot of money, but it's not a real lot of money. And if you want to pay off those loans, you're going to want to go into cardiology or something else where the money is much bigger. But where we need physicians is out there in the neighborhoods doing that work. So what if the government paid for your medical care, medical schooling, and then in return, just like if you were in the Army or the Navy or the Public Health Service, you gave back? Maybe a year, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe you agreed to take on a regular number of less fortunate patients. And wouldn't it be great if even dermatologists kept their skills up a little bit so that the only thing, they didn't forget how to do a standard history? No, I think it makes perfect sense. We should make them doctors, they should work for us. Makes sense to me. In essence, what I'm saying is let's make health care like our government, with tiers and levels and different ways of engagement. Basic needs are like sewers and water. We should just get them through the common taxation we all have to pay. Routine needs are kind of like driver's licenses. You got to go out and get it, but everyone pays the same fee, and you got to renew it periodically. And if you want to drive a truck, it'll cost you more. Everyone is in the system. That helps to disperse our risk, but you can add what you need or what you don't need, depending on who you are in those areas in between. You, though, have to make that choice, and you, though, have to pay for that outcome. Now, this doesn't sound like much of a sermon. I should have been talking more about God and stuff. I know those guys up there saying, that's not a sermon. Am I right? You're not saying, you're saying, geez, he hasn't mentioned Jesus once this time. My God, these people are going straight to hell, aren't they? Sorry, I don't mean to pick on you guys, but you kind of stand out. This sort of way. But you're asking that question. This isn't a sermon, but yes, it is. Why? Well, if you went into the Torah, that's the Jewish Bible, by the way, in case you didn't know. Half of it is instructions on how to run society, how to cook your meat, which meat to eat, what clothes to wear, who you can marry, who you can't, how you do business. Religion is about running your daily life. It's about making sound choices, right choices, good choices, wholesome choices, and whether it's written down in a holy book or not, these are questions that must be part of our religion, because if religion is only here to make you feel good and doesn't help you do good, it is an outright failure. That's a fact. Now, I can't tell you what to do because guess what? You're all grown-ups on this bus. But I can insist that you think about these issues and that you put your feet on the ground about them and ask these questions. Perhaps we need to remember also the Epistle of James, who reminds us that it's not always by faith but also by deeds that we are measured in this life, that we have ma'asim tovim to do. That's the Hebrew for good deeds. Do tzedakah. Get out there and do good deeds. And good deeds means making a nation that is just for its people. The issue is out there. You're making all sorts of votes. I'm just trying to raise this up. Is the general welfare something that includes our physical welfare? I think it does. I can't tell you how far it should go, but you know and I know that if it is not there, we are not as healthy as a nation as we need to be. Even today's psalm, did you notice that last line? Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. Peace be within your walls and security within your towers. For the sake of my relatives and friends, I will say, peace be within you. For the sake of the house of God, I will seek your good. That's the point. Mother Jones, great union organizer in the 19th century, is famous for saying, pray like hell and work for the living. She's right. Pray for peace, friends. Work for justice. Have a good week. And amen. Now, let's join our hearts and voices in song. Our second hymn and the last one is a wonderful text by William Blake, the romantic poet of the early 19th century, to mercy, pity, peace, and love. It's number 93. Let's enjoy it together, shall we?